Hi all, it's time to look back at the year that has passed and sum up annual achievements of the Title Tuesdays. We will find out who are the most frequent winners, who earned the most prizes, and who is the king of the year. I prepared some interesting statistics, which I will share with you in one whole story. Let's start off with the general facts. There were a total of 103 events in the last year, with a total prize amount of over $250,000. One event was cancelled due to internal technical issues. 4,065 participants played almost 395,000 games. The most frequent participants were Sergei Zhigalko, Mikhail Golubev, and Nikolai Vlasov. Sergei only missed 3 tournaments for the whole year. Each of them played over 1,000 games. On average, 472 players took part in each tournament. The minimum participants showed up on March 14th, 279 players. High record number of players, 626, were seen on September 8th. Here we could see graphics of the number of participants by day. Red color marks the morning tournaments, blue evening. In general, more players were recorded in the morning due to the time difference for those players who live in Europe and Asia. Now we would consider these points anomalies, where less number of players were seen in the morning events. Here, like I have mentioned before, the morning event was cancelled due to the technical issues on the platform. On March 14th, in my opinion, an interesting case took place. Only 279 players showed up in the event. The day before, in the US, was Daylight Saving Day, while Asian countries did not observe such a tradition, and European countries did it 2 weeks later. Most of the players were not aware of this fact, and as a result, signed in for the tournament late. It would be nice of chess.com to notify players in advance, to be fair to all members. And here lots of title players were taking part in the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Championship in Samarkand. So we have reviewed all anomalies in this graph. Let's move on. Alright, next is rankings, the most interesting part for most. We would take a look at the players who won the most tournaments and who made the most profit out of playing in Title Tuesdays. I'll start off with the players who won the most events. The first 2 would not arise any questions, thus Hikaru Nakamura with 18 successful events, Magnus Carlsen, who came first 9 times. On average, each of them wins in every 4th event, with a little advantage for Hikaru. Therefore, Hikaru wins more often due to a larger number of participations. Third place is taken by Dmitry Andreikin with 6 victories. Hikaru and Magnus have 3 times more shares of events won by the number of events than Dmitry. Next, we have a group of players with 5 wins in the tournament: MVL, Danya Dubov, Nihal Sarin, and Alireza Firuja. The last player, according to Vladimir Kromnik, does not play well in the last round. If we sum up shares of winning of these 7 players, then with the probability of 106%, one of them would win the tournament. Of course, 106% is just a joke. Like we learned from Alexander Grishuk, we all need to make use of conditional probabilities and bias theorem. Now, we will take a look at how much money the players have won. A few words about the prize fund. Each event has a 2.5 prize money. It is 5,000 a week. First place wins 1,000. Second place 750, then 3,500, 200 and 100. Therefore, only 5 out of 500 would get a prize. The leaders in the board are Hikaru and Magnus again. Hikaru made $28,700, Magnus $15,850. On average, Hikaru Nakamura gets $388 per one event, Magnus $406. We calculate these numbers by taking the total prize won and divided it by total numbers of events participated by the player. Magnus more often gets the prizes, almost 60% of all events. Hikaru would get the prize in slightly more than 50% of cases. More than $10,000 were received by another 3 players. Well-known Jose Eduardo Martinez Alcantara Jaspam, Dmitry Andreikin, and Alireza Firuja. It's worth mentioning that Jaspam and Dmitry took part in a high number of events, which in turn secured them good results. On the other hand, Alireza Firuja had participated in a lower number of events, but nevertheless, he is just $100 behind Dmitry and Draken. He would get prizes more often than Dmitry and would get higher position than just Spam. That is why his average price per event number is significantly higher than Dmitry's and just Spam's, yet over 2 times lower than Hikaru's and Magnus's. Down the list we have Nihal Sarin, Jan Krzysztof Duda, Aram Hakabyan, Alexander Botnik, and Matthias Blubaum. Here it's worth mentioning the achievements of Nihal Sarin and Aram Hakabyan. Having a lower rating than the other players, a fewer number of participated events, they made it to the top 10 by getting high numbers of share of events with prizes. Very popular in Russian-speaking YouTube space, Matthias Blubaum has a high number of participated events, but relatively low achievements, and barely make it to the top 10. Now we would take a look at the share of events with prize leaderboard. Here we have Magnus Carlsen leading the chart. Right behind him is Hikaru Nakamura. Next we have 3 new names, Garchu08, Iturizaga, and Liam Lee. Each of these new players earns more than 300 per participation. Also, the top 10s are shared by MVL, Nihal Sarin, Yan Nepomniachtchi, Alireza Firuja, and Platon Galperin. The 3 highlighted players look different from the others. They have a relatively low FIDE rating and low number of participating events. Nevertheless, each of these 3 players scored once in Title Tuesdays. Let us check their last Title Tuesday event and last game on chess.com. We find that all 3 haven't been seen in Title Tuesday for quite some time. Their last game on chess.com is very close to the date of the last participation in the Title Tuesday tournament. My assumption is that some of them were the victims of the chess.com anti-cheating politics and their accounts were blocked. In the beginning of 2024, I can share with you that Eduardo Iturizaga has already played a tournament on January 2nd. However, after being defeated by 2 CMs, he withdrew from the tournament. Perhaps he was given a second chance by chess.com and he was simply banned from playing on the platform until the end of the year. So let's have a look at the table without these 3 players. Now the top 10 includes Aram Hakabyan, Fabiano Caruana, best player of the previous year in my opinion, and Levon Ranyan, the strongest GM. Noting that almost all players have a FIDE rating over 2700, a little behind Nihal Sarin and Adam Hakabyan, who misses a good 80 points. So, all rankings that we have considered contain 2 names at the top, either Hikaru or Magnus. Now, it's time to evaluate who was the best Title Tuesday player of 2023. Let's bring back data that we have already seen. Hikaru Nakamura participates in more events. He ends up in the first position more often. He made higher income in Title Tuesdays. However, Magnus has higher numbers in share of events with prizes and average price per event. The most amusing part is to review statistics when both players participate in the same event. Total number of such events is 27, 2 of which were won by Hikaru, 6 by Magnus. If we look at the relative number of wins, then Hikaru has only 7.4%, while Magnus 22.2%. This means that the presence of Hikaru in the same tournament reduces possibilities of winning this event for Magnus only by 3%, whereas for Hikaru the same percent of possibility when Magnus is playing decreases by 26.5%. That means when there is no Magnus, Hikaru wins in every 3rd tournament. When Magnus is present, he wins in every 14th. The difference is huge and quite noticeable. Another interesting fact to observe is their win streaks. Hikaru played almost twice as many games than Magnus, where his best record is 26 games without a loss in a row. Magnus started his best streak on November 7th and has 62 games straight without losing. His streak continued into 2024 and ended on January 16th with a great 81 games without a losing in a row. To resume the annual achievements of Hikaru and Magnus, we see that, despite Hikaru scoring more wins, Magnus really shows outstanding results. Let's give credit to Magnus. And the last part for today with the code name Fabiano versus others. I would get back to the table of total prize won, But this time I would add Fabiano Caruana, the best over-the-board player of 2023. Here we see that Matthias Blübaum, who scored the last tournament of the year, just $150 ahead of Fabiano Caruana. However, Fabiano Caruana is still ahead of many players by average price per event. I included Fabiano not only due to the fact that in my opinion he is the best player of the past year, but also because on his podcast he voiced quite an intriguing opinion about cheaters in online chess. So, Fabiano Caruana stated that over 50% of online players cheat in some ways during the games in Title Tuesdays. Here I have to mention that the first person who came up with a similar statement was Vladimir Kramnik. During the podcast with Fabiano, he expressed a more careful opinion of 20% cheaters. On the contrary, Danny Rensch, chief chess officer of chess.com, opposes the top players, saying that only 3% are suspected of cheating. 3% versus 50%. The difference is significant. Certainly, chess.com has more data to estimate and build up statistics that is not accessible for us. However, we should not forget that it's not in chess.com interest to show a high percentage of cheating on its platform. So, who is more accurate in their assessment, dry 3% from chess.com or more emotional and build up from its own senses, 50% from Fabiano? Further in this video and some future videos, we will consider data through the prism of the above two assessments and define who we trust. Now we will get back to our investigation. Here we have a table which shows how the Title Tuesday leaders played with each other. Unfortunately, Nihal Sarin didn't get to play with two players from this leaderboard, so I had to exclude him. Given presentation of data is not quite usual for chess fans. However, this structure is more optimal for our further research. First number indicates shares of points that a player scored with a particular opponent and the number of games between them in the bracket. Despite the fact that we called Magnus the best player of Title Tuesdays, in our imagined battle the absolute winner is Nakamura, who scored 5.8 points out of 9. The main contribution to his victory was due to successful results with Jaspem and Aram Hakobian. Even his crushing loss to Fabiano still let him get to the very top of the chart. Second place is as usual taken by Magnus Carlsen, who shows positive results with most opponents, except Dmitry Andreikin and Fabiano Caruana. Third place goes to non-successful finisher Alireza Firouzja, thus he is just slightly ahead of Jaspem and Dmitry Andreikin. The star of our video Fabiano Caruana ends up last on our table. Having a positive outcome with Hikaru and Magnus, he lost to many other players. Let us try to guess who could lay into those 50% of suspected cheaters by Fabiano. It's fair to mention that with such high estimation, any player can fall into the category of cheaters. Let's consider those players that have lower rating than Fabiano but have positive outcomes after playing with him. These players are Jaspem, Blübaum, Hakobian and Bortnik. I'm going to name them the 4 knights further in the video and create one more table. Additionally, I included in this table Hikaru Nakamura, who Fabiano didn't lose any single game in Title Tuesday in 2023. We see that the 4 knights scores the same amount of points here as Fabiano Caruana does. And Hikaru Nakamura, one of the best players of Title Tuesdays, takes the last position due to his repeated loss to Fabiano Caruana. The number of games played between Fabiano and Nakamura is comparable to Fabiano versus the 4 knights. Another fact to notice is that despite Fabiano being called best player in 2023 over the board, Hikaru has positive results against Fabiano in offline games. So now, if we try to accuse the 4 knights in using chess engines when playing with Fabiano, should we, to be fair enough, suspect Fabiano himself in cheating when he played with Hikaru to achieve such a significant results? To me, the answer is simple. The distance is too short to give such a conclusion. Fabiano has not played with any of the opponents more than 3 games, and Hikaru shows that they can be played and they can be beaten. To underline our last part, I would give credit to Danny Rensch and chess.com, but it was just a first round, and Fabiano would have chances to get even. In the future video, we will consider performances of the players and will create our own rating, similar to rating ELO. Bye bye!